Good afternoon, YouTube. Tire Metalhead Weatherman here. Hopefully you guys are doing well. In today's video, we're still looking more so into the long range. There is some interesting stuff going on in the mid to short range, but the further out we look, things seem to be really starting to spice up, especially towards mid-month. So we're mainly going to be putting a little bit more emphasis on that, especially considering I normally don't like to read into too much of the more of the severe weather parameters, but I've been seeing a couple of interesting looks. But what I'm worried about with this is not necessarily that I'm going to look into this with the intent of maybe forecasting already, is the fact that this could change and this forecast will probably end up being turned over on its head. But that being said, let's go ahead and jump into it. So we're going to start out by looking at the Euro. We're actually going to look at three models today. We're going to look at the Euro, the Canadian, and the GFS here, since we're early in the afternoon here. Normally I don't do this because I'll be coming home from work. It'll be about 5, 6 o'clock usually by the time I start shooting. It's 3 o'clock right now, so I'm in a good spot. And these models are pretty fresh. They're all 12Z models. That being said, here's what we're looking at right now. This is what we were looking at this morning, excuse me. But this is what the Euro showing us right now. Small shortwave system, some moderate little system that's going to roll in through the Ohio Valley. Mainly going to be bringing mostly rain. No real frozen precipitation to be expected at this time. As this deepens, there could be a chance of some snow on the backside of this, but it's going to be relatively it's a relatively minute spot. It's going to be mainly right around the Adirondacks and areas to the north of that towards Maine. Other than that, we're just expecting some shortwave energy here, some showers, maybe some storms possible. And this pattern is going to persist a bit. Like, again, not too much frozen precipitation unless you're off to the west here, where we're still dealing with our atmospheric river. Now, this is the next system that I'm watching here on the 10th coming in, and this looks pretty impressive for the most part, but there isn't too much warm air clashing with cold air, as you can see here. One thing to note here is that there isn't a 540 line. The 540 line, it's in these little small numbers right here. But if you were looking for that number 540, that's the 32-degree line. We aren't really seeing that right now. So it's going to be mainly a warm core system. There is potential for a cold core setup towards the center. However, when we look at the warm air right here, there's not a super abundant warm sector. Maybe a little bit towards areas where we've been seeing it. Unfortunately, it looks like Louisiana, parts of Texas, and maybe a chunk of Arkansas could be involved in that there, as well as a small section of Mississippi and Alabama. But the forcing just doesn't really seem to be there just yet. As we go forward, it does come in, but it's going to be looking like it's a little bit more of a linear setup. It just seems like there's not quite enough lift with this to really set off a discrete event, but this could change considering we're still over 100 hours out. But for the most part, I think the general synopsis with this system is going to be leaning more so towards a linear type of severe weather event, if there's going to be any at all. Towards the south, though, that's where I'm going to be most interested in any chance of a tornado threat. I don't expect anything crazy with this as of right now, but like I said, there's plenty of room for this to change. It's mainly going to be isolated around the southern part of the Tennessee Valley and probably going to be staying west of the Appalachians. So areas a little bit further off to the west, I'm expecting more so showers and thunderstorms, but nothing of the severe variety. And we may have to watch for some sneaky snow on the backside of this, especially towards the Ohio Valley, towards West Virginia. We roll this forward here. Right behind the back end of this system, look at this big ridge that sets up right here. Look at all the warm air that's associated with that. When you get into the 582s, you're getting into the 70s, and this is starting to push pretty far north, and some 75s could even be possible towards the Gulf of Mexico as this moves around. But this is going to set the stage for our next storm system, one that's been catching my attention over the last couple of days actually. And this is going to be around mid-month, And we can see that this isn't the best trough. It's not very well dug out, but it does try to become closed off. And there seems like there's a little bit of a lift out ahead of this, and this could lend into multiple storm modes and multiple hazard types, possibly even tornadoes. And this could be existent along the Ozarks, the Arklatex, maybe even towards the Mississippi River Valley, and even into the southeast. This looks like it gets a decent pull from the Gulf of Mexico moisture as well. So this is what we're going to be really starting to hone in a little bit later into the video. And as this rolls forward, it looks like there's a good bit of cold air behind it. We're getting close to that 32-degree line here. That 543 is just above freezing. And it's not far away necessarily from some of those warmer temperatures here. Here's 546, and then look over here, we're getting towards that 570 line. This is close enough to cause a nice little clash of air masses here. So we'll move this forward, and then we'll watch a little shortwave that comes in behind it. But it's not going to have quite the same oomph. I would say that there is still potential for severe weather out ahead of this, but the lift isn't going to be quite the same. It looks a little bit more linear. It also kind of has a look more of a potential flash flood type event. These storms could be training over the same areas over and over, and you could end up getting a real mess out of that. But that's what the Euro is showing us, and the Canadian's showing a little something different. It's showing a little bit cooler on the warm side, but overall, and I didn't mean to pull up this sounding here, but overall, if we move this forward, it's not too far off. The temperatures are always a little bit more questionable to me when it comes to the Canadian. Not saying that it's a bad model, but it always tends to be a little bit off on the temperature in comparison to the GFS and the Euro. So this is our next system that we're watching here on the 12th. You're not quite seeing those same warmer temperatures, but there is a little bit more subtle forcing with this out ahead of it. Not by much though, but even so, it still looks like this is going to have a linear type of look to it. Mainly damaging winds might be the threat of this upcoming system. The weather threat's going to again stay west of the Appalachians, and probably going to be, maybe I'd say southern, maybe no further than south central, maybe even north central Tennessee. Anywhere north of that, I'm thinking you're just going to deal with mostly rain, maybe a pop or two of thunder at this time. So here's our ridge coming in. Actually, the Canadian shows a little bit warmer trend as the next storm system comes in, but even so, the result's all the same. That storm system comes in, almost looks like it tries to form a negative tilt here. But as this storm system comes in, we start to lose some of that warm air. But that warm sector still exists. However, this also looks like it tries to limit some of the forcing here. Even so, there's still a chance for multiple storm modes with this, and thus multiple hazards. So this storm system towards mid-month is one that we're definitely going to have to pay attention to. Then, of course, we have another storm system behind that, and what looks like there could be a pretty not significant, but pretty notable cool down behind it. Make the comparison with the GFS here. We're going to see pretty much the same thing for the first 240 hours as what the other models are showing. There's of course, with different models, there's always minute differences in temperature, and we'll go over the actual physical temperatures in just a second here. But one thing we also have to note also that the GFS always tends to be a little bit more aggressive with these storms. There's a little bit more abundant with a little bit more abundant of a warm sector, I should say, with the GFS in regards to this upcoming storm system that should be coming in midweek for the eastern half of the country. There's a little bit more warm sector, not so much upper level forcing here, but there is a slight chance where there could be a window of discrete storms, mainly towards Tennessee, maybe northern Alabama and Mississippi. We'll have to watch that closely. But this also drags in more cold air with it. That makes for a much more stronger storm and a much more interesting scenario to play out here, where it could be maybe a little bit of snow and ice possible over towards the Ohio Valley with this. And this storm system really gets its act together here, maybe even becoming a little bit more coastal here and causing a little bit of a nor'easter for the Long Island region here too, because it looks like enough cold air gets in with this system to where we could be getting snow all the way towards Philly and New York City. We'll watch this storm system move out. There's this really impressive ridge that comes in, and then GFS has this as a much stronger storm already, and it digs a little further south, and it makes for a much bigger warm sector too. And this is a little bit more concerning of a run here because this has a linear look to it, but you can see these little small blotches of yellow. That could be pieces of energy and vorticity out ahead of this main line here. So this could make for an even more interesting run, but this is also at a slightly different timing too. This looks like it's Tuesday morning on the 17th. So this is looking like it moves a little slower with the GFS, but nonetheless, it pretty much looks all the same in the end. It looks like there's a pretty sufficient potential for severe weather here. Move this forward, and then we have there's that other storm system that we've been looking at on the other two models. This starts to come into play around the 18th, and this ends up digging pretty far to the south too. And there could be another bit of potential for severe weather. These little streaks right here are a little bit concerning, but I don't really think this will amount to a lot. We'll have to watch these little shortwave systems that come in too in coherence with that system. I'm not too sure what these will do right now, especially given how far out we're starting to look. We're getting close to that 300-hour mark where things really just start to get fuzzy as far as the models are concerned. So we move that forward, and this almost has the look of maybe a flash flood and maybe extended severe event. I'm not entirely sure as of right now. It's okay for meteorologists to say that when they're this far out. But as this goes forward, really strong storm system comes in, and then you can almost see this cold air starting to stack up around here. This could become a little bit of a problem later. Do I think it will be anything like what happened at Christmas? I don't think so. I'm almost certain of it, in fact, but this is alarming, not just in the sense of maybe strong to severe storms, but just flooding in general. And then we see these next few systems come in, and they're a little bit weaker. This looks like they're mainly going to be short waves, but look at this cold blast that tries to come in right behind this system here towards the end. This is going to be more so towards the end of January where we could expect the potential of this occurring. Let's not read too far into this because this is 16 days out. It's January 8th. We're looking at January 24th. I can't tell you how many times I've seen model runs like this where it looks crazy one minute and then next minute it starts to look more benign. And then by the time we get to the event, it's next to nothing. So let's not read too far into this. Let's not panic. Let's just keep the ball rolling here and move on to the temperatures now. So I'm trying to get this thing to behave, but here's what we have going on around our current time. We're just going to jump these forward to each of the more notable storm systems in particular. Start out, for the most part, everyone's going to be above average. And then here's that storm system that's going to start coming in on the 10th. Warm sector starts to develop mainly towards Texas. And then as we get towards the 11th, it becomes a little bit more abundant. We have a pretty good warm sector that develops around southern Texas in particular. I saw a few 80s pop up there in one of those scans, like right here actually. And this is even towards central Texas, maybe even close to Dallas. So that's really interesting. And this moves forward along with that front. And you can actually see it highlighted here. We're getting into our mid 60s right here, but right behind this, we're getting our 30s and our 40s right behind that. This is towards the afternoon of the 12th. This is when that weather will start moving to the southeast, and then we'll be moving out from there. Then here's our cold air coming in behind it, and then watch this ridge that pops up. You're going to see this clear as a bell, like clear as day. So we're leaning more towards the 14th, and then watch what happens here. boom, getting into those 70s, and we're looking at those 70s really start to emerge more so towards the deep south, maybe the Midwest. I'd say Texas, Oklahoma, we're watching you for the increasing temperatures. And then when we get into the 16th, we'll watch this begin to develop more for the southeast. We're mainly going to be looking more towards Mississippi, according to the GFS, southern Georgia, and maybe south central Alabama for that. That warm air is really looking like it's trying to build more so towards the south in the middle of the month. By the time we go towards the end of the month, though, here's that cold air trying to sneak its way back in from the northwest here, mainly from Alaska and parts of Canada here. If we make our comparisons with the euro and the GFS, the euro and the GDPS, it's a little bit different, obviously, considering the fact that we're looking at a smaller time frame here. We're only looking 10 days out versus 16. But for the most part, we're looking relatively the same. I think the warm sector is a little bit more abundant as time goes on with these two in the events leading up to that system in the mid-month. So here's that storm system rolling out. This is going to be coming in around the 15th. And we can see where that collision occurs too with the warm and cold air. Like, see, on the 14th, this is the morning hours, we're getting some areas around the southeast getting back into below freezing temps for the morning. And then by afternoon, we're starting to see that warm air starting to push back in, almost like it's from the Baja. Then the Gulf of Mexico starts to get involved here. And this is towards the 16th. Here's that cold air that's coming in with that new system right here. It's just to the west of the Rockies, or just on the Rockies, I should say. And then right behind that, here's our Gulf of Mexico moisture coming in. This is our warm sector right here. Then we can see this warm sector extend out to the east. Cold air comes in behind it. We have our collision air masses. Boom, there's our storms. Canadian's going to show something almost identical to that. And actually it shows a slightly more aggressive warm sector than what I was thinking it would based off the vorticity. Of course, we're looking high up in the atmosphere at that point too. So we're going to also go ahead and look more towards the 15th and the 16th. Oh, wow, that's actually a little bit colder than what I was expecting it to pull off too. We're getting temperatures almost into the teens here for the southeast as we head into the morning hours of mid-month. But watch how quickly this warms back up. We look towards Texas on the Texas coast of the Gulf of Mexico. We're getting close to those 80s. A lot of areas around the south are getting into those 60s and 70s. And this extends to the east as time goes on. So we'll have to watch this area as well for the potential of severe weather. But further off to the east, it looks pretty daggone cold still. Almost like a cold air damming effect takes place. I find that really interesting as well. And then, of course, we have to watch towards mid-month after this point, too. I think the storm system that could be after the 16th might have a lot of potential as well. Because we're in this interesting kind of flip-flop pattern. Not what you would expect towards the middle of winter. I would say you would be expecting this towards early winter, more so towards fall and spring, but maybe after that one big cold blast that we had around Christmas time, I'm thinking maybe the atmosphere's confused. Alright, so let's go ahead and actually take a look at the dew points here. So I've decided to jump this forward here actually while I was doing that to mainly try to keep the video a little bit shorter. I know you guys don't want to see a 30 or 40 minute video. If you do, let me know in the comments. I'll give it a shot. But sometimes after 20 minutes I really start to get sloppy here. But when we look towards the 11th and into the 12th, here's where our warm and moist sector tends to exist. We're mainly going to be looking at this on the Euro. GFS and the Canadian are going to show something similar to. I mean, they're pretty much in good agreement, I would say. So, I think from this point we can start looking at one model for this system. that's coming in around the 11th. We can see warm nose and moist nose develop here towards southeastern Texas. A lot of this is in the same areas that we've been seeing getting affected by severe weather. Really sorry that you guys keep going through this, but this is what we're dealing with right now, and it looks like this could be a multi-day event over this region too, because those dew points don't necessarily go away. We look towards the 11th, there they are, and towards the 12th, they're still existing, and they don't really move out until the morning hours of the 12th, so this could be a multi-round event possibly. And then we watch as this rolls off further to the south and east here. We can see that just south of Atlanta here looks like where the most abundant moisture is. Birmingham, it looks like you're in there again. Panama City Beach, Tallahassee, we're watching you guys possibly. And then as we move this further forward, that warm and moist sector will start to diminish as this progresses off to the east. And then we'll see that things calm down. Of course, it's based by the low dew points that we're seeing here. But as we go towards the 16th, watch this. It's over the same area again. And look how rich the dew points are offshore. That's one thing I'm finding concerning. That, and if you look really closely here, you can see the wind barbs pushing onshore. Not what you want to see if you're not looking for severe weather. The moist sector looks like it makes another big jump up to the north, but doesn't quite make it in the same manner as the last system. But this, of course, has a lot of room to change given how far out we're looking, and to see it this early does raise a little bit of concern, in my opinion. So I think over the next few days we'll be watching the Storm Prediction Center. We may see a day 6 or 7 slight risk. I wouldn't rule it out at this point, but we're definitely going to be keeping an extra close eye on that system on the 16th. So far, that's been the one that's looked the most impressive to me. So now that we've looked at that, let's go ahead and look at the precip type on all the models here. We'll see if there's any chance of a bigger winter event going on as well. Of course, we'll highlight what's going on in the west. So here's our next system coming in here. Big event for anyone that's west of the Rockies, especially on the snowy side of things. Of course, we already have talked about the Sierra Nevada. There's no point in talking about it further. You guys are just going through it right now in one sense. But also, this is helping you guys as far as your drought situation is concerned. So I don't know whether to tell you to bear with it or not, but this could make for better times ahead, hopefully, if there's any sort of positive spin to get out of that at all. So here comes our next storm system. Like I said, mainly looking pretty linear for the most part. I'll have to watch it out ahead of this line maybe for the potential of a few discrete cells, especially as this progresses to the east, especially towards South Georgia. And then as this goes on, like I said, there was always potential that there could be some snow that sneaks around on the backside of this. This definitely looks to be the case. And mainly it's going to be towards the Great Lakes where the heaviest snow will fall, and the rest of it will pretty much be north of the border. Our next system comes in behind that. Here it is around mid-month. And we can mainly see a line of storms, but I do think there is potential for some storms to form out ahead of it. You can see these little green blobs. Given how far out we are, I'm not expecting to see super high res on that at this time. But you can even see the Gulf of Mexico moisture flow on this model even. Considering that we're almost 10 days out, that's still pretty impressive, and that's still something I'm going to be paying extra close attention to. And then, of course, our next system that comes in behind this one also is pretty stout, and we'll have to look at the GFS to confirm what's next with that one. Make our comparison on the Canadian. There isn't going to be much of one. This isn't going to be quite as high res as the Euro. This is a high res version of the European model, not a short version, so that way we can be a little bit more in depth here. See, you can even see here, I've said this is going to be this system that has a little bit of a linear look to it. may bring some damaging winds, and we're just seeing it more as just green blobs, no yellow, orange, or red, or anything of that sort. This model is just not designed like that. But we do end up seeing a little bit more of a warm nose that forms, and not much moisture coming in behind it, which I do find a little bit interesting. And then of course here's our next system. You can still tell that there's a severe weather potential there, and you can see more yellow with this system, which speaks to the intensity that's possible around this region. And then as we move this off, this breaks off, cold air doesn't quite make it as far south on this as the European and the GFS models. So we'll have to see how this performs as time goes on. And then of course here we are going to the GFS. So it's going to be a pretty similar look. I think there's a lot of model agreement with these first couple of storms. Here's our first system coming in. Pretty sufficient snow, especially to the west of the Rockies. There is some snow that tries to sneak in towards northwestern Kansas, and then this storm system, as it moves forward, here we are seeing that linear look that I've been talking about. And then of course we do get some snow, cheeky snow on the backside of this towards the Ohio Valley, and then towards the Great Lakes. Just as quickly as this goes in, it moves out, and then we watch our next system come in, and almost you can see a secondary low pressure that's north of the border. I'm wondering if these two end up interacting just slightly here and allowing for multiple storm modes with this. And this will also help funnel in a little bit of cold air to help bring a little bit of extra snow towards the far northern tiers of the Great Lakes. Then here's our next system behind that. This one looks pretty impressive. Pretty good convection with this, but I think the surface temperatures may be a question here. Either way, you can see these little streaks here that are going to be bringing in trains of showers and thunderstorms toward the south and east, and this is what I'm worried about in regards to the flash flood threat. Then as we go further and further out, not disregarding this, but this is a pretty big storm system. Might be overplayed, but there's a lot of cold air behind this too, so I wouldn't be surprised if this happens. I've been seeing a look for the last couple of days that would make me believe that there is a lot of cold air expected to come to the west right around the end of the month, and I do eventually think that this will make its way to the east. So big storm system by the time we look at the end of this model run, as well as we look towards the Midwest, and this is a 998 millibar system. Definitely has that bomb cyclone look to it, and there's a lot of moisture on the north side of this. I don't know why we aren't seeing much rain on the southern side, but that's just what happens when we get towards the end of these model runs. Things get a little bit wacky. Not going to read too far into the snowfall total since we've already talked about them so far. Not too much has changed with that. So at this point, we're pretty much at the end of the video here. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. Hopefully this one isn't too long for you to watch. We'll try and do some timestamps on this one. But if you did enjoy, definitely drop a like. Definitely subscribe if you haven't already. We're only one sub away from 200. And let me know what your thoughts are in the comments about these next storm system. Which looks bigger to you? Does the one on the 12th look bigger? The mid-month storm? Or is there one on the GFS that catches your attention the most? But enough rambling from me. This has been Tire Metalhead Weatherman, and I will see you guys in the next video. It's the first time I've ever messed up the outro, so if you want to see a blooper at the end of the year, just let me know. But until then, take care.